Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. It is not only Shabbat coming very quickly, but also Passover starting Saturday night, right on the heels of Shabbat. As Shabbat goes out, Passover comes in. And it's another Passover in a world that seems upside down and backward, very chaotic. And I want to talk about this Shabbat, although we'll be reading Parshat Tzav. It's also known as Shabbat HaGadol. The Shabbat that precedes Passover is known as the Great Shabbat. And it's customary to talk about Passover. I want to talk about the Seder and order, and particularly as it comes to this Saturday night Seder. And I think there are lessons we can learn from that to help bring some order to our own lives as well. This idea of a Saturday night Seder was very troubling for the rabbis. They wanted to make sure that Shabbat got its due. It's very important that Shabbat gets the honor that it deserves week in and week out. They also were very concerned that we start the Seder as early as possible. Can't do it until after Shabbat has ended, but they didn't want us to have to do lots of preparation after Shabbat ended. And the problem is you're not really supposed to prepare for the Seder on Shabbat. That's not being, giving Shabbat its honor. But if we wait, then we have another problem, which is that there's a lot to do in preparation for the Seder. So what do you do? Should we spend Shabbat setting our table and getting things ready, or should we wait? One novel approach that I read as I was researching this comes from Rabbi Chaim Benveniste, who lived in 17th century Constantinople, who said if Pesach falls on Saturday night, one should set their Seder table not on Shabbat, but on Friday afternoon. Now, this is a novel idea, and I don't know anybody who follows this idea of setting their Seder table on Friday afternoon. Of course, the biggest issue would be that where are you going to eat your Shabbat meal? But that was what he said. Later sages start to say that people aren't going to do that. They come up with reasons to be able to set the table on Saturday afternoon, but they say you shouldn't do it until at least past midday. So mostly Shabbat gets, Shabbat treatment. I happen to love Rabbi Benveniste's answer, and I think there's a lot that we can learn from that. And that is about being intentional in how we separate our times, right? The rabbis, what they're really struggling with is you have Shabbat and you have Passover. They're coming right on top of each other, and they want to know, how can we make sure we give each of these times their due? How can we be fully in Shabbat when it's Shabbat and fully in Passover when it's Passover? And Rabbi Benveniste's answer is, well, prepare in advance. Be really deliberate and careful in about how we are going to spend our time, and by doing our preparation properly, being very careful about how we do it, we can make sure that each of those times are able to be just those times. I think there is tremendous, tremendous wisdom in that, and a huge lesson for us today. How often are we able to be focused in a given task at a given time? We are so distracted. We carry so much with us from moment to moment. And if we happen to get a free second, how long does it take us before we're pulling out our phones and we're looking at our social media or checking the news or whatever it might be? Sometimes I lose my focus so much, I pull out my phone to do one thing and it flashes something at me and I don't even remember what I pulled it out for because now my mind is someplace else. Anybody else have this phenomenon? I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. So how do we make sure that we can actually be in a moment? We talk a lot about mindfulness today, but that's not enough. It's good to practice mindfulness, but we just don't live in a world that gives us the ability to move from place to place without these kinds of distractions. And if we, for example, are worried about our work, then when we're with our family, we're not fully with our family. Or if we're worried about what's going on in the world, what's going on, let's say, in Israel, I know I spend a lot of time worried about that, then it's hard for me to take that, to move from that and to set it aside when I am trying to do something I enjoy, like going for a hike. And believe it or not, even when horrible things are happening in the world, spending time with our family, hiking, being able to focus on our work, being able to focus on our volunteering. And when it's time to focus on the things we want to address, like, say, what's going on in Israel or other things about society that are important to us, that we can focus on those better also when we have made Seder, when we have followed this idea of from Passover of Seder, not only of each step of the meal, but when Shabbat and the Seder are running together to make those separate. So I come back to Rabbi Ben-Venista's idea, which is that by preparing in advance, even so much as to set your Seder table on Friday afternoon, which I know most of us are not going to do, and I don't think ever really caught on, as a thing, but the concept is sound. And that is to think about what's in front of us and create an order for when and how we are going to address different things, such that when we are in each one of those things, we know there's time for this other thing, right? If I'm in my work time, I know I'll have family time that I have set aside to address that. If I'm in my family time, I know that work time is some other time, or volunteer time is some other time, or I have set aside 40 minutes or an hour to check the news every day. Depending on who you are, you might do that just in the morning. Maybe you give yourself 3 20-minute slots. But I know that we can all do just fine in the world by only spending an hour on the news, because humans survived spending much less than that for a long, long time. And, in order to help us achieve this, finding times to put our phone down and not have it in our pocket, I think we can all get off of social media. I don't think there's very much benefit, if any, coming to us. Whatever benefit is coming is far outweighed by the amount of space it takes up in our brain and in our time. We can't seem to, most of us anyway, can't seem to avoid it. It's why I've gotten off of Facebook and Instagram, and I highly recommend. It's been quite freeing. And I read the paper in the morning. I have 2 set times that I check in on the news during the day. And so far, I haven't missed anything. And certainly it doesn't seem like anybody is missing me on the internet. This idea of Seder is one that is sorely missing from our world right now, and perhaps from our lives right now. But we don't have to let it be so. Right? We can be deliberate about how we order our time. Right, by bringing this midah, this attribute of Seder, into our lives. And this is a Seder that the Musar rabbis talk about. This is an attribute that the Musar rabbis talk about, Seder, order. And how we bring that to our lives, that is a Musar value. It is a value, it's a life value. It allows us to be whole spiritually and physically and in our relationships and mentally and emotionally. And this Saturday night Seder, this challenge of honoring Shabbat in Shabbat's time and honoring the Seder and Passover in its time, can really be an inspiration to us all to be deliberate about how we spend our time, to spend maybe a little time at the beginning of the week scheduling so that we can craft out what are our important moments, to give us the opportunity to evaluate that and to spend our times in those correct ways, and to recognize the things that are distracting us and not really adding a lot of value to our lives, and to schedule a lot less time for them and a lot more time for the things that really are important to us. If we can all capture that sense of Seder in our everyday lives, there is no doubt that our Passover, and not only our Passover, but all of our lives and our time will be better spent and will be sweeter, will be more in line with our values. That would be the best afikomen present of all. I wish you a Shabbat Shalom, a very happy Passover, a Zisin Pesach, a sweet Passover, and a happy holiday, and Shabbat Shalom.